What is up, YouTube? Dottz Gaming here with the first of 3 videos in my How to Play DW Frost in PvP guide. I decided to break them into 3 videos instead of just doing one really long one. The first one's going to cover talents, glyphs, and your stat priority. The second video will cover macros, and the third video will cover abilities and rotation. So starting off with our talents. So the first tier is pretty cut and dry. You want to go Plague Leech, you always want to go Plague Leech. Due to the fact that Frost only has 2 death runes, like they have 2 death runes all the time, Unholy can generate death runes very easily through their strikes, but Frost has access to all the time, but only 2. So Plague Leech can consume your disease, or diseases, depending on what you run for your last talent, but for DW you're only going to want to run Necrotic Plague. So your single disease, and it gives you back 2 empty runes, 2 fully depleted runes as death runes. Plague Bear and Unholy Blight don't even come close to giving you the same benefits that Plague Leech offers, so always go Plague Leech. This 57 tier, honestly, if you go anything but Lichborn, people are going to laugh at you. Anti-Magic Zone, 2-minute cooldown for 3 seconds of 20% reduced spell damage is pretty bad, and Purgatory is literally just delaying your own inevitable death by another 3 seconds, while Lichborn gives you immunity to Charm, Fear, and Sleep for 10 seconds. It acts as a trinket for those things, and it increases your leech by 10%, so you get 10% of like lifesteal. So honestly, it is really no contest on that tier. 58. Honestly, I would recommend running Chillblains or Asphyxiate. I mean, Death's Advance, I'm assuming, could be used if you really know how to use it, but I just don't recommend it because the other 2 are a lot better. If you run... Alright, so basically there's a rule of thumb. For BGs and RBGs, personally, I always run Chillblains because of the AoE effect that it brings. But for Arena, run Asphyxiate if you're in a comp that doesn't have many stuns. Run Chillblains if you're in a comp that does have a lot of stuns. It's pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. I run Chillblains because I play TSG mainly when it comes to 3s, and honestly I just like Chillblains for DW Frost a lot. So the 2 tiers that come under probably the most debate, and in my opinion this is where you have personal choice. The 60 and 75 tier, they're kind of linked together. So I personally choose to run Runic Corruption, Death Siphon. You can honestly run any combination for 60 and 70 of Blood Tap and Runic Corruption and Death Pact and Death Siphon. Those are the 4 talents where you can choose either Death Pact or Death Siphon and Blood Tap or Runic Corruption, and you could really be fine. It comes down to personal preference a lot. I personally love Death Siphon as an ability because just the kiting potential you can bring. You just kite and heal, or you can even toss those heals inside your normal rotation if you're like playing against a warlock or something. And it's just, ever since it got buffed, it just brings so much healing, and especially because we stack mastery as our stat, as that ability deals more damage, your healing is only going to go up. So I honestly would prefer Death Siphon over Death Pact. Unless, in 2s you're running up against, like a rogue and a feral, and they're going to go on you. You just want to run Death Pact so you don't die instantaneously. But anyway, for the 60 tier, there's always this big debate between Blood Tap and Runic Corruption. Personally, I think, if I'm not mistaken, somebody did say that Runic Corruption does give you more runes over time. But Blood Tap gives you more control over said runes. I personally like to run Runic Corruption because I believe if you don't use Blood Tap correctly, you end up taking a DPS loss, while Runic Corruption can just mindlessly be used and you don't have to worry about anything. So I guess a too long didn't read version of everything I just said was, I would recommend using Death Siphon for the 75th tier. If you want to run Death Pact, you can. And when it comes to Blood Tap or Runic Corruption, it is honestly up to you whether or not you want more runes over time but a little more RNG, or you want a little bit less runes over time but more control over said runes. Alright, so the 90th tier, Desecrated Ground. Never take Remorseless Winter, it's terrible. Gorfian's Grasp is only good for RPGs. Desecrated Ground, honestly, is just good all the time. It's like another trinket. I love it. I couldn't imagine without it. The 100 tier, always run Necrotic Plague. Because we stack Mastery, and the way our rotation is, we stack this ability up and spread it so easily that DW Frost has a really, really awesome AoE pressure. I honestly could never see a situation where you would want to run Breath of Sindragosa, being that your main damaging ability, Frost Strike, uses Runic Power, and Breath of Sindragosa also uses Runic Power. It's just not necessary. So always run Necrotic Plague. But this setup is what I run 99% of the time. So, Glyphs. This is my general Glyph setup. Glyph of Runic Power, because with all the movement impairing effects that are in the game, and have always been in the game, plus this is our old set bonus, this thing procs a lot. The fact that we use Runic Power a lot is good. This helps you get more blood charges if you run Blood Tap, or helps Runic Corruption proc more, because you have more Runic Power at your disposal. You can Frost Strike more, and therefore you can get more runes. Glyph of Icy Touch, there's never really a situation where you won't want this, unless you're in twos against a team that doesn't bring any dispellable buffs. But I have this Glyph on 99% of the time. And then I generally will run Glyph of Regenerative Magic. So basically, if your anti-magic gel expires after its full duration, the cooldown is reduced by up to 50% based on the amount of damage absorption that's left. So it helps, if you want to AMS offensively to prevent yourself from being CC'd against a mage, prevent yourself from getting ringed or polyed, you can use this. And then once it expires, it'll cut the cooldown by a significant margin, so that it'll be up again very soon. Now, when it comes to swapping out glyphs, generally the first glyph I swap out is Regenerative Magic. And basically, I'll swap it out for either Dark Sim, if I'm running up against, say, a mage or a warlock, where they cast their main CC all the time. So by having a cooldown of 30 seconds on your Dark Sim, you can steal a lot more CCs. And basically, you're not going to run Regenerative Magic against mages and warlocks where that damage absorption, it's going to get wiped out anyway by their damage. So I would recommend running Dark Sim personally. What else? Glyph of Empowerment I would only recommend for 2s. If you're in 3s or RBGs, there's really no reason to bring it, because you have healers that should be doing their job anyway. And honestly, you're going to want to use Empower Rune Weapon offensively anyway. So I think it's a waste in 3s or RBGs. But for 2s, I don't like running with a healer in 2s, because I don't like playing chess with the other team. I think it's very boring. So I generally will run double DPS for 2s. So Glyph of Empowerment gives me a big burst heal on my Empower Rune Weapon, which helps a lot. So I would recommend subbing that in for Regenerative Magic in 2s, but that if you're not running with a healer. But that's honestly the only time I would ever use it. Shifting Presences is good if you're running up against a team that's gonna swap onto you real hard. So like a Thug Cleave, where you need to worry about are they gonna just turn and crap in my face? So I would stick in Shifting Presences here, so that you can retain your Runic Power while quickly swapping to Blood Presence. But those are honestly the only glyphs you'll ever really want to sub in. I mean, everything else I personally don't recommend. So yeah, like I said, Dark Sim, Empowerment, and Shifting Presences should all be. I always swap those in for Regenerative Magic. I basically keep these two most of the time. There's rarely an instance where I take one of them out. What else? Okay, stat priority. So, your first stat that matters the most. Mastery. You want to stack as much mastery as humanly possible because it basically is a flat DPS increase for DW Frost. It increases your frost damage done by 49%. Well, that's what mine does right now, but it just increases your frost damage done. So your Howling Blast and your Frost Strike, which is probably your two most used abilities, just get a flat damage increase. That's literally amazing. There's really, in your Necrotic Plague, gets a damage increase. Your Death Siphon gets a damage increase, so therefore it does more healing. Mastery outclasses absolutely everything for DW Frost. Your secondary stats versatility, because versatility literally is just a flat damage increase to everything. And it decreases the amount of damage you take. So mastery first, versatility second. I believe it is, and obviously strength before both of those. I believe haste would come after that, and then it doesn't even matter past that point. You never want crit or multi-strike. You want to avoid those two stats as much as possible. You don't need crit because you have Killing Machine, and multi-strike's just not good for DW Frost. So again, mastery first, versatility second, haste third. Nothing else matters. Obviously strength before all. So in terms of gearing, the big question basically that's being asked, and it's the only really difficult question that's being asked, is 4-set, yes or no? Honestly, right now, take epic pieces that obviously meet your stat needs over your 4-set while you're gearing. So if you have to drop your 4-set to put it in an epic piece that has the stats you want, just drop the 4-set. Keeping your 4-set is not worth the bonus you get right now from running epic pieces in your gear slots. I made that mistake early on and got rid of some epic pieces that I could have used because I was like, oh, gotta keep the 4-set, because at that time I was still bouncing between Unholy and Frost and I wasn't sure what I wanted. But now that I ended up sticking Frost and I'm like, I could have used those pieces of gear, I was stupid for getting rid of them. So basically, drop your 4-set if you can sub in an epic piece with the stats you need. When you get to full gear, though, I think that having the 4-set will be very beneficial. But for while you're gearing and until you have absolutely full gear, I'd say don't worry about it. You don't really need it. And in terms of weapons, basically, you can choose axes or swords. Doesn't really matter. I chose axes because axes have more top end damage, so you can deal have a bigger strike than with swords. Like swords will deal a little bit less damage, but the damage window is more consistent, while axes have a little bit of a wider damage window. But the highest number that an axe can achieve a higher hit than a sword, so that's why I personally chose to run axes instead. So I believe that covers it. So thanks for watching the video, guys. Hope this helped. Hope this cleared up some stuff. The second video will cover my macros, and the third video will cover abilities and rotation. So thanks, guys. Check those out. Subscribe, like, check out all my social media. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.